Good afternoon, happy Friday, and just thought I would share a few thoughts and encouragement on this Friday, as it's been another tumultuous week of interesting news and political developments and that whole 9 yards. And don't worry, we're not going to analyze the politics of anything, but I do want to discuss the idea of winning, losing, and what that really looks like. We talk in terms of a contest a lot of times, and as Christians, we can talk about in terms of a contest, and are we winning? Are we losing? When we think about the culture war, we're like, are we losing the culture war? Are we losing ground? And we tend to think in terms of winning and losing. Is losing always the opposite of winning? Now, from a human perspective, generally, yes. You know, you play a game, and you either win or you lose, and if you win, someone else loses. And this is the way we tend to think. We tend to think in terms of battle. We tend to think in terms of fighting the enemy, which may be cultural forces of darkness or whatever. But we think about losing or winning. But there's another way to think about winning. And it's the way that we sometimes do use this word in church and in Christian circles, but I think we need to get back to it more. When we talk about winning the lost, we're not talking about beating the lost. And this is where winning does not include beating, like beating the other side. It's not losers. It's you're trying to win people who are lost. And this is what Paul talks about in the New Testament. He talks about he wants to win people, not beat people. He's in a contest against the devil, not against people. His goal is to try to win people. And Jesus talks about this, and the Bible talks about this, about when you have an opponent, do you try to win them as opposed to you try to beat them? In fact, Jesus explicitly says, don't try to beat them, try to win them. Be willing even to lose on the human side of things, because it might mean by losing humanly, you can win them spiritually, which is the real winning. Because those who are not won do not lose, they are lost. And that's not a victory. And this is the attitude that God shows. And we sometimes think that God is in this fight against evil, but he's not in a fight against evil because there's no competition. God isn't challenged by evil. He doesn't have to fight against evil. He's too strong for that. And it's why we have the verse that says, God says, I take no delight in the death of the wicked. This isn't a winning moment for me. When a wicked person dies, when they are lost, I lose too. I'm sad. There's no delight in that for me. But oftentimes we are eager to see our enemies lose. We want to win, and we want them to lose. And that is not a godlike attitude. And it is not a gospel attitude. And so when you hear Christian voices urging you to enter the fight in terms of winning and losing, step back and say, wait a minute, is this about them losing and me winning, or is it about me winning the lost? Is it about me reaching people who need to know the good news that God loved them enough that although they were not acceptable to God on their own, Jesus died for them on the cross so that they could be declared righteous, so that we, in the same way, could be declared righteous. Because that's how we win them. And that's why we need to be content to lose, humanly speaking. And that's what Jesus did. He lost, humanly speaking. He was crucified. And shamefully so. He didn't have a death of honor, a death of glory. He died shamefully. And it said he did that because there was joy set before him for that. But we're scared to death of losing because we think we can. And yet Jesus described his kingdom as unshakable. You can't lose. He goes, nobody loses anything if they've given it to me. And nobody can take anyone out of my hand. And so we need to just re-examine this, because this last week, the PCA and the SBC both had conventions or convocations, whatever. And they're just worried about losing ground, about losing. And maybe you're worried about losing. Maybe you're like, oh, culture's going to hell. Cultures don't go to hell, but people do. And those people are not your enemy. They're your goal. Your goal is to win them, not beat them. And if you consider your mission as a Christian to beat people as opposed to win them over, then you've misunderstood pretty much the whole New Testament and the Old Testament. Reread Jonah, where Jonah was sent to Nineveh, the capital of his political enemies, and he was eager to see them lose. And God finishes the book of Jonah by asking the question, shouldn't I have compassion? These people don't understand me. Shouldn't I have compassion? And we say, well, people today, they don't recognize God. Yeah, neither did the Ninevites. And yet God showed them compassion because otherwise they would be lost. And eventually Nineveh was lost. It was judged. And judgment is coming. But we shouldn't be so eager for it, because Peter tells us that God is not eager for it. He is patient because he doesn't want to see people perish. He is trying to win people, not hurry up and beat people. So there's your thought for today. Are you actively seeing enemies or targets for grace? Opportunities to show mercy and grace to people who are enemies, because that's what Jesus did. That's what God does. That's what we need to be. And we need to worry about winning the lost, not beating our enemies. Things to think about. Hope you have a great Friday. And if you're in the area Sunday, love to see you at Beans Corner or wherever you go to worship. And have a good day.